The methane escape to the atmosphere. That is why we are telling that this should be the largest hydrocarbon stock in the world over there.
On December 1st, 2015, the New York Times said this, quote, "In fact, Russia is the fourth largest greenhouse gas polluter, and a global survey of 40 countries released this summer found that Russians had the lowest level of concern about global warming out of every country but one, Ukraine." That's from New York Times, The Road to a Paris Climate Deal, December 1st, 2015. For years now, Vladimir Putin has been an almost mocking opponent of action on climate change. Russian television, however, has been producing global warming-induced human extinction scare videos since as early as 2012. The little green boxed RT watermark is from Russian television. Thom Hartmann from RT's The Big Picture even presented a documentary produced and narrated by Leonardo DiCaprio called The Last Hours: The Frightening Reality of Global Climate Change. One of the most chillingly displayed narratives on doomsday warming I have ever seen. See the link in the description. In fact, the first human extinction piece I had ever encountered was Humans Could Be Extinct in 9 Years - Scientists by RT America, which I, at first, found to be much more puzzling than scary. Frankly, I didn't believe it. Not only that, but the whole extinction concept has been met with nonchalant skepticism from most people I've bothered to mention it to. Even still, somehow, strangely, the fact that this doomsday narrative was coming from the Russians at that time gave it a certain credibility. Why would they lie about a thing like that? But crucially, my experience with the election season of 2016 got me asking the question, what are they really up to? First of all, RT is a Russian propaganda outlet. Nothing appears on their programming without approval from the Kremlin. So if the doomsday thing was at all inconvenient to Russia's bottom line, you wouldn't see it. And the fact that they seem to be pushing it really makes me think they're up to something. But what is it? Now let's consider that Central Command for the United States is located at sea level in balmy Tampa, Florida, with no plans to move. Also recall that Russia just iron-booted the Crimean Peninsula, which conveniently hosts a warm water port. True, Russia's issues with the Crimea are largely personal and historic, and they did have a long lease on the naval base at Sevastopol. Nevertheless, there were tensions with Ukraine about extending Russia's lease in the years leading up to annexation of the peninsula. Sevastopol would probably be crucial to Russia's navy regardless of the functionality of its other bases. It is, however, interesting to note Russia's involvement in the Syrian war, considering access to the naval base at the port of Tartus. Syria, of course, lies at the center of a swarm of petrocentric geopolitical issues that affect Russia in the region. Russia obviously doesn't give a shit about global warming, and is not in any big hurry to give up its nearly sole source of income from hydrocarbons. If Vladimir Putin really thought that runaway global warming was a serious problem for the lower latitudes, he would not draw heat to his own petroleum business by doing PR for the environmentalists. He would certainly try to put that heat on hydrocarbon extraction in the U.S. and other countries. The concept of cultivating political heat for your adversaries isn't new. The doomsday narrative radicalizes people. Author Phil Torres said in Psychology Today, quote, "Some have even argued that the most significant struggles throughout history and in our present era have been non-trivially fueled by antagonistic eschatological beliefs. In The End, I refer to this as the clash of eschatologies, a phenomenon I distinguish from Samuel P. Huntington's famous Clash of Civilizations. From Merriam-Webster, eschatology is the part of theology concerned with death, judgment, and the final destiny of the soul and of humankind. Existential fear is the most powerful motivator because it is absolute. There is no transcendence of any kind. All terrorism comes from existential fear, as it contains the absolute shame of failure to procreate and/or perpetuate one's culture. People will commit unimaginable atrocities to avoid dealing with this humiliation. Note that murder is most often followed by some form of humiliation. In short, the doomsday spiel is so efficient and ubiquitous a political weapon that carbon doom may just be part of the overall political warfare du jour. Another useful thing carbon doom does for those people out there making fortunes from pollution is it turns the public against environmentalism. The genius of it goes beyond reverse psychology. Extraordinary fear induced by the prospect of human extinction inspires a lot of people to research the validity of carbon doom with extraordinary thoroughness. A certain portion of these people find that the increments, fractions of a degree for temperature, parts per million for CO2, and parts per billion for methane are small, and that the circumstances for previous planetary annihilations were far beyond anything humankind is probably even capable of. The force of that bursting bubble of primal fear could conceivably turn perfectly reasonable people away from environmentalism entirely. This would be bad, because the introduction of unregulated sulfur alone at the rates expected from larger populations could make near-term extinction a real possibility. This has to do with the synergistic amplification of acid concentration by SO2 from burning fossil fuels. The half-life of carbon in the atmosphere is too short, 2.7 years, to get us to a doomsday scenario without lowering the pH of the world's oceans because of the insolubility of carbonate compounds formed there. Lower oceanic pH allows atmospheric CO2 to accumulate faster by keeping it in the gaseous state. Humans contributed most of the sulfur in the atmosphere until we regulated it to stop acid rain. The fact that we can easily stop acid rain is probably our only saving grace. We will present more on synergistic acidification in future videos. Now back to the politics of social division. Divide and conquer is made possible by something called zero-sum wedge issues. Zero-sum means that they involve articles of faith that cannot be overcome by arguing. Matters of belief are nearly indestructible. For example, a pro-lifer can argue with the pro-choice person until the end of time and neither of them will be swayed. By the same token, the scientific underpinnings of many of the challenges we face as a species are so arcane that they can come down to a matter of faith. We either believe them or we don't. Global warming, with its myriad interpretations of volumes of data, has simply been turned into yet another wedge issue with the usual attendant radicals poised on both sides. Again, people are radicalized by frustration with intractable political dilemmas. Some would argue that this is how we ended up with President Trump as the personal Molotov cocktail of the disenchanted, which is interesting considering claims that Vladimir Putin hacked the election that put Donald Trump in the Oval Office. Clearly, though, this is more than just a Russian thing. There are many governments, entities, and multinational corporations around the world who see the complex morality of the American people as a threat. This has made sowing the seeds of division in the United States big business for as long as we have been around. The American people have so little social cohesion at this point that it's amazing we still have a country. The good news is that change is inevitable. Our children will see our insanity for what it is and do something different whether we like it or not. Our perceived insanity also provides motivation to environmentalists, frustrated by the highly visible and inexorable decline of other species. The thinking goes that when extinction becomes a real possibility for all of us as individuals, we will finally do something about the root cause. About that, one of my first memories is of the movie Soylent Green, with Charlton Heston and Edward G. Robinson, released in 1973. I was 9 years old, and this movie, along with all the other dire warnings about the environment, cast a 30-year pall over my life. I didn't think, I knew we were going to kill this planet. And then we didn't. Instead, we started solving seemingly intractable problems like acid rain and the destruction of the ozone layer. So the doomsday thing kind of leaves me cold, because I lived in that depressive state for decades, and I'm just not doing it anymore, especially when someone tells me it's hopeless. My needs are simple. Give me solutions, or get the fuck out of my face. I just haven't got time for the pain anymore. Now, I think of myself as a kind of ecumenical skeptic. Every message that I see is designed to manipulate me one way or the other, and more often than not, the manipulation is coming from someone trying to turn a profit. Everything is a racket. It's all about marketing and market manipulation of one form or another. In other words, carbon doom is a scam. Beyond the fear sells concept to get eyeballs to watch Russian television, though, the question remains, how could Russians possibly profit from carbon doom? The headline, "Russia Embraces Offshore Arctic Drilling," graced the business pages of the New York Times on February 15, 2011. The reason for Russia's plunge into the Arctic Ocean is simple. Quote, "As its Siberian oil fields mature, daily output in Russia, without new development, could be reduced by nearly 1 million barrels by the year 2035, end quote. Not long after this piece came out telling the world that Russia was looking for offshore drilling partners and investors, RT started running stories about methane feedback doom from the continental shelf off of Siberia. By 2012, everyone on the planet had seen the time-lapse images of shrinking polar sea ice and all the bubbles of methane pouring up from Russia's continental shelf. Methane feedback doom essentially put every eyeball on the planet on Russia's new drilling prospects, which was subsequently surveyed for free by every swinging dick in academia. And if anyone is worried about no sea ice in the Arctic, that's just fine for drilling from a seaborne platform. Like him or not many people doubt Vladimir Putin's shrewd abilities to make things happen. And the ploy seems to have worked swimmingly. Except now, the Trump administration is not allowing Exxon to proceed with an agreement to form a joint venture signed in 2011 that would allow Exxon to do offshore exploration in the Black Sea and the Kara Sea in Siberia. Quote, "The undeveloped oil fields are thought to be the most promising in the Russian Arctic, according to S&P Global Platts," end quote. Russia has surpassed Saudi Arabia as the largest oil producer in the world, and these offshore reserves are expected to maintain that status for years to come. That is, unless a new ice age buries the Kremlin under 100 feet of snow, putting Russia's global influence on ice permanently. Well, that's it for now. My name is R. Crosby Lyles, and this has been News from the Can. If you like this content, please rate, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you.